Alright, welcome back to another working on your car video here. Today's thing was the oil pan was leaking across all the back, so went ahead and completed the project, and now I'm doing the intro part of it just because I have some pro tips for you. Step one's definitely get some eye protection of some kind. I just have these plastic glasses things just go over your eyes because there's going to be a lot of stuff dropping in your face. Also, this tube of ultra gray Permaflex stuff, it is hard to squeeze. Like, they make it look all nice in the video. I don't know if they got some kind of fresh tube or something or what, but this thing took like a lot of squeezing to get it out. So I highly recommend I guess resting up your hands before you do that, because it's not quite as easy to squeeze a little bead as you see all the YouTube videos. Next up is the car covers. You see those two black things there on the right over there? You're gonna have to take off both sides. You're gonna have to take off the right side and the left side and the little support member that goes underneath, just because you want to be able to get at all sides of the oil pan. The key to that is that oil pan is stuck on there like, I don't know, white on rice or something. It does not come off. So it took us 2 nights of working on it, pounding on it with stuff. Eventually we had to use a razor with a pair of channel locks to clip on the razor, and then use a little hammer to tap the razor along and cut through the Permaflex stuff, or the gray seal of whoever changed it last used. So once we got through that, we used a little paint scraper and then another paint scraper, and we got 2 of them in there at the same time, so we could kind of open a little opening, and then we kind of just worked that around. It was definitely a lot of work, so set aside some time. Some people were like, oh, you can do it in an hour, no problem. Well, I'm sure maybe you can if you're a gorilla and you have super strong arms or something, but it took us, this is day 3. So as you can see, there's definitely some pro tips. Also, this is a nice little flashlight holder idea here. Just put some gravel in there and put the flashlight in it, and you've got something that points up the whole time you're using it, which is great. Okay, so to take these undercarriage things off, there's these 2 bolts here, 1 bolt here, 1 bolt there, and then 1 bolt right there. And that will let this whole entire plastic piece come down. You don't have to take off these little bolts there, and there's 3 that go down this side that you don't have to take off. The whole thing will come out with just those 4. It'll drop down. The other side already dropped down. Same thing, it's just the 4. They overlap here in the middle. The one on this left side that's not there right now actually goes underneath this one. So I'm gonna have to undo those screws and put it underneath, and that'll put it back. I'm going to put this at the front of the video though, just so you know how to take those off, because at the time I didn't think I had to take off this right hand side one, or the driver's side one, but to get at that side of the oil pan there, it's really best if you take it off to give yourself the room you need. Today's video is going to be about replacing the oil pan. We have some leaks back here. I don't know, there's my valve. It's not actually leaking. The leaks are up there. You can see right along that gray edge. You can see the drips on it and everything. It's apparently coming out of there in a pretty heavy amount. You can see it's dripping across the back of the car, or back of the chassis, little stuff there. So the thing that concerned me the most about it was this air compressor here. It's bolted right in with the bolts for the oil pan. There's 3 of them. 2, 3. And they're apparently a different size than all the other smaller ones, which are like 8 or 10 millimeter. So what I found in a YouTube video is I can undo this bolt, and it'll come out of this subframe here, or this little frame thing. Then you can undo these bolts, and that frame will come off, but you don't have to move the air compressor for the air conditioner anywhere. It'll just sit there, in theory, without any problem. So once this frame's removed, I can pull the oil pan off, clean it, reseal it and everything, and then put it back. So I'll include that in the video. So it's all pretty hot right now. I just got home from work, and I figured I'd start draining the oil while it's nice and warm. So I'll just do a quick video of that too. About these little valves, I forget what the actual name of it is, like Futomois or something like that, is you can very easily drain your oil without making a mess all over the place. I'm going to put a light over here. Hopefully this will make sense. So pretty much you can just put your, well, in this case, you don't even have to put a hose. but I'm going to put a hose on it anyway, just to make sure it doesn't dribble out or anything. I have a short, just a regular plastic hose. You can just fit it right on this little nipple here. Oop. And then put it right into the end of your barrel. So, and then all you do is, let's see if I can get a light up here as well. You just turn this little little knob here. Ooh, can you see it? Just kind of go down and... Okay, so I'm starting my oil pan seal change. This is the AC air compressor. These are 12 millimeter. All these little ones around the oil pan, they're all 10. And then I think these are 12 as well. You can't see in that darkness there. That's 12 as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've already drained the oil out. The oil's good to go. Let's take off this AC air compressor. Like I said before, I'm going to take out these bolts. They go into this bracket, and then I'll be able to take this bracket off without having to disconnect the air compressor or move any of the hoses and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. And there you have it. Both bolts came right out, no problem. They're pretty long. They got to fit all the way in there. I'm just going to leave them here in these two holes because I don't want to lose them or anything, and they're not really in the way. So next off is going to be trying to take this bracket off. It's got the 3 bolts there, one there, one down inside of this tube here. There you go. And then one on this side here. So that's going to be our starting point, and then we'll work our way around the oil pan from there. Alright. So after some banging on it with a hammer, this part can come right off. You see we took out the bolts. And now you just have us in the oil pan here. So now we're going to be going around all these. Notice that bolt's different than all the rest there, so you're going to have to make sure you have a 12 millimeter for that. If that'll work with that bolt. It looks like it has weird sides on it. And then we'll go around all the oil pan and take that one off. But yeah, these things just kind of rest on there. You can see the hole where the screw comes out, or the bolt comes out. And so it was just a few taps with the hammer and knocked it loose. Okay, so these little star screws, or bolts, I got it off of the 13 millimeter, but it wasn't tight at all. So and it's much longer than I thought it was going to be. It's a pretty long screw right there. But you can see the end of it is a bunch of stars, a little star pattern, if it'll focus on it. So I used a 13 millimeter, but you could very easily ream it out or something if it's tighter on your car. So I'm going to do the next one, and we'll see how it happens. Okay, there we go. We have the whole bracket out now. The air compressor is disconnected. So all that's left now is, well, or this part anyway, is going around getting all these 10 millimeter bolts all the way around the pan. And then we should be moving on. Okay, so I'll take a quick tour here. Oops, sorry, wrong side of the phone. I have one bolt left in there. On this side I have one. And then down underneath on the other side, sorry it's so close, but I don't have a lot of room. Also sorry my camera doesn't like to focus. 2. So I have 4 screws left. Everything else came out okay, pretty easy. No major issues and stuff. This is definitely the leaky side. The fun part will be trying to get this pan off without damaging the aluminum on the actual motor. I do highly recommend, which I probably should have said at the beginning, an extension on your ratchet. So something like that to make sure that you can reach while still going over the oil pan itself. Otherwise you're going to have a rough time trying to get those out without a little extension on there. Alright, I'll go ahead and pull out the rest 4. I just left 4 in, just hoping in case one day it just actually dropped off by some kind of lucky miracle, that it wouldn't drop off on my face. So, here we go. Okay, finally got it off. Here we have an oil pan. So, this thing was a bear to get off there, and that's really what you read on the forums and everything. Everybody's having problems getting it actually to unhook. The RTV stuff really clings onto there really hard. So what it ended up taking is we tried, you know, banging on it with the hammers and, well, wood in between the hammer and the metal and trying not to ruin the pan. But it ended up taking a razor blade, just a straight razor, and just going right along the edge, working your way through. You can get probably about halfway in. As you know, it doesn't like it to poke out super far, so I mean it's not like you can go really far in, but just working our way down. And then we actually got a paint scraper, or putty knife, and got it part way in, and then used that to get a slightly larger one in right behind it, and then just kind of move those down using a hammer and stuff, of just working your way around. Just really be patient. I know it's really frustrating because this thing does not come off. This is day 2, so last time I couldn't get it off at all. But just got to go slow and try not to scratch up the aluminum block. And you can see all the putty and stuff's actually inside. And whoever did it last time, they used some kind of brush on the block, and it's got a bunch of little grooves in it, but I don't think it's anything that's going to cause it to leak. But anyway, so we finally got the oil pan off. I poured out the extra oil into my little spare jug here, and then we're going to try to get all this goop off the actual edges. We run through it all with a razor and everything, and see if we can clean this thing off really well. But just definitely be patient with it, and take your time, because you don't want to ruin the whole oil pan and have to buy a new one or anything like that. Alright, part way through cleaning. I got my little brushes here and straight razor, and I was using this to pull the extra goop off. All these little indents here are definitely difficult to get it out of, but you do need to get it out of all of it. I'm going to try some carburetor cleaner. Whoop. Some of the forums said it helps like loosen this stuff and get it off a lot better, so I'm going to try that and see if that helps at all. But you got to get this clean. This is the easy one. I think the harder one's probably the engine block, because you don't want to really, as far as I know, scrub with something like this that can flip particles of it into like the oil pump stuff, because it'll stick right to the oil that's on there, and then end up being in your oil filter, and who knows where else it'll go. So under the car is definitely going to be harder to clean than this. Here we are underneath. I clean this as best as I can, or we can. That's my gravel rock chute here. Just try and get as much of the old gasket off of it as possible. It looks like someone else scrubbed this with some kind of abrasive something, probably at the dealer when we took it there a while ago to get the same thing done. We decided we actually wanted to do it ourselves this time to make sure it gets done really well. Alright, this part will be crucial. Here's the oil filter. We took that off, went ahead and drained that. More of the oil came out of here when we did that. It's occasionally still dripping. The key is all around this cleaned area, it has got to be absolutely free of any kind of liquids, any kind of oil or grease, because that Permatex stuff has got to set up in it, and it's got to do a bond to the actual aluminum, so it's very important to clean it. What we're going to do is get under here. We've created a huge mess down here with oil dripping out of random stuff and all that. We got an oil bin that missed stuff, but anyway, we tried. So we're going to clean all that up, clean up the floor as much as possible so we can slide under here and not get it all over us. Once we've cleaned up this whole entire block area, I guess the seal, whatever you want to call that, we're going to actually put the 2 bolts in that I talked about earlier where we cut the end off. They're going to be like guide bolts. So we're going to screw them into the 2 ends, probably this side and then this side over here. And so once we have the sealant on the pan, we can use those 2 guide bolts to guide it straight up onto the block, and that way all the holes are lined up and we don't have to try to slide it around, because the key is you don't want to slide it around a lot when you're trying to tighten the bolts in with the seals. So I'm thinking that the 2 guide bolts are going to help us be able to slide it on there and get the other bolts in without scooting the oil pan around too much. I'm actually going to have someone else help me to hold it, so when I'm working on putting the screws in by hand, you don't have to try to hold it with one hand while also trying to fumble around with screws and stuff. In the cleaning phase, I've used this denatured alcohol. We used that last night. Each one of these screws, you can see it's got like the little, well, let's see where the focus is. Try to focus on the end of it. So I've been putting it in my vise. I can't hold my hand on the camera and do it at the same time, so get ready. Tighten it down on my vise a little bit. And then I pop the little top off. It's got this little suction-y thing, or leftover sealant. I'm going to take my trusty brush and just go to town. Since I soaked it in it, in my glass jar right there, I soaked it in there for like 15 minutes or so. Then I just go to town at it and try to get all the stuff. You can see right along the base of it. Oh, maybe where it's got some leftover. And this may be entirely overkill, but this is what I've been doing for each screw. There's 16 of this kind. And just trying to get them as clean as possible. And then when they're done, you drop them on the floor, like all good mechanics. And, well, it'll focus again. They're fairly clean. They don't have the sealant in all the threads anymore. So I've done 4 so far. Focusing is hard, apparently. What is this? Should autofocus, you would think. Anyway, so I'm working my way through these. Got the drain pan cleaned up. I haven't put the denatured alcohol in it. That's going to be our last pass right before we put on the sealant. So we're hoping to do that tonight and get this thing knocked out. Okay, so we had high expectations for how easy this was, but this stuff squeezes really difficult. So if you have some kind of thing that helps you squeeze this, that would be lovely. But as you can see, it's not quite as neat as we were hoping, but it is definitely getting all covered. It says to go around every bolt hole, so there you go. Okay, so we got the bead on, we put it back on the car, we tightened everything hand tight until it bulged out the sides. You can see where it kind of seamed out a little bit. Let's move my light here. All these. Oh, watch out for oil still dripping out of there. We did what best we could at clearing that surface I showed you before. Oil just continued to slowly drip out, and this is like day 3 of the car being in here, so I don't know that it's going to stop anytime soon. So we cleaned it off, we oiled the thing as best we could, or we used acetone on it. And then as fast as we could, we stuck the pan on before any oil or grease could get under it. The key here too is when you're going around this bracket that we talked about earlier, it's got these 2 star ones that are 12 or 13 millimeter. I mean, obviously star pattern, but you can do it with the 13 millimeter. We started to put the bracket on, but then figured out we can't put the bracket screws in because this bolts wouldn't be tightened in and there's no way to get to them once the bracket's on. So we're gonna have to wait the first hour. It says to tighten them down hand tight until it bulges out, and then wait an hour and then tighten it the rest of the way. So we can't put this bracket on until the second part of that, once we can tighten these 2 13 millimeter bolts all the way down. So we're kind of stuck, it's stopped at this point, waiting for the hour for it first to do the first set. Other than that, it went fairly smooth. It is hard as anything squeezing it out of that tube. It really takes a lot of hand strength and continuous mushing the entire way around. But we managed to get it going. So, here's this side over here. You see it squeezed out a little bit just like it was before from the other people. But that's apparently exactly how it's supposed to work. So we're going to tighten all these back down in about an hour or so, about 40 something minutes from now. And then put this last bracket on here, and then hopefully it'll line up well with these bolts and they can go right in without any problem. Right, here we are again. I've gone around each one of these bolts and put it each one to 8 foot-pounds of torque, which is what I read on the internet they're supposed to be. see how the goop slimed up around some of them. This bracket, I went ahead, let me get the light. The bracket, I went ahead and put the funny star bolts, which are right down up in there. Put them to 8 as well, because I don't remember them being very tight anyway. And you don't want to over tighten one half the pan. And then I put the bracket back on. So we should be good to go.